Easy now. Papa got things making headlines.
Come down. Ooh, you make my high come down. Always tripping when you come around. I'ma have to cut you off, like right now. You see, I don't want to drive me. You can say that for your mama. Maybe you should smoke some. Me try the marijuana. I was never you good. The vibe was straight. Showed you a couple of things and they ain't finished change. I treated you right. Everything was a gift from.
Welcome to the Seahawks Man-to-Man podcast, powered by The Athletic. Shout out to the company. My name is Michael-Shawn Dugar. You can follow me on the tweet machine at Mike Dugar. That is Mikedugar. And yes, I'm verified on there. Shout out to Elon Musk as well for not taking my blue check away. Shout out to all of our YouTube subscribers as well. The Seahawks Man, the number 2 man on YouTube. That is the name of the channel. We appreciate you. Yes, we're going to get the guest thing going. This is off-season guest time. Don't worry about it. Chris, talk to the people.
What is good, everybody? It's your boy, Christopher Kid. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at CKIDD206, and that's CKid206.
All right, we're coming to you on Tuesday afternoon, roughly about 24 hours-ish after Geno Smith has secured the bag. He has signed an extension with the Seahawks, or a new deal extension, doesn't really matter. Reportedly, 3 years and $105 million is the total worth of the deal. Got to be specific with those numbers, as I was told yesterday. He can make, I think, $52 million over the first calendar year. Mike Garafolo of NFL Network reporting that they got $40 million guaranteed, $28 million in the first year. And really the base value of the deal is like a 3-year, $75 million. So from a math people back home, that is $25 million a year, and then another $30 million in incentives, which is a lot. That's a lot of numbers to start the podcast, Chris. But I do think, I don't know if we've talked about this in a pod before, Geno's deal, and most deals are like this too. You definitely got to be wary of how it's initially reported. I was taught that lesson a little bit ago. You always want to know the guarantees. You always want to know the signing bonus and things like that, because you'll get a number thrown out there. I'm trying to think what was the most egregious example recently. I want to say like, Derek Carr is actually a really good example. It's like, what is it, like 4 years, $150 million, but I think he's got like a $50 million base salary or some shit like that in the final year of the deal. So really, it's like a 3-year, $100 million deal. Now, 3 years, $100 million is great, but that's different than 4 years and $150, right? I think Tyreek Hill's deal is like that as well. Maybe we did. Did we talk about this when DK was about to get paid? I feel like this sounds a little familiar now.
We might have.
Yeah, because I think there was some of the receiver deals last year were like that as well. Like Tyreek Hill's deal is not really $30 million a year. I think that last year is really fluffy. Same thing with Devontae Adams' deal. His is like 4 or 5 years and like $1 something crazy. But really, for the Raiders, it's like a 3-year, 70-ish, something like that, which is why DK's deal is like a 3-year, 70-ish. And I believe Terry McLaurin's deal is like a 3-year, 70-ish as well. And even A.J. Brown's deal, I think, is very similar. That, like, in terms of practical money that he's actually going to likely see, it's like a 3-year, 70-ish. So all those come out, but none of those all were reported the same. I think AJ's deal was reported as like 4 years, $100 million, something like that. So all that stuff is good to know, because what happens is you get agents and stuff who will throw some numbers out there, like, yo, I just got my client 5 years, $500 million, and then you get then the contract gets submitted to the league and gets put on the NFLPA site and it's approved, and then it gets to like overthecap.com or Spotrac, however you say it, and you look and be like, hey man, this is a 1-year deal. So that's important to note. But first, Chris, before we get into the X's and O's of it, we got to give a mini round of applause to Geno Smith there.
Yeah, man.
Good
well
for
deserved.
Geno. Yeah, man. Good for Geno. What was he on? He was on a contract for 4 years on his rookie deal, I want to say, which is standard rookie deal. And then after that, I'm pretty sure he just signed 1-year deals for like, what was that, like 4 or 5 years in a row? Now, it wasn't no 1-year deals for like minimum wage. But in the NFL, it essentially was, man. He wasn't making no bread by NFL standards. for quite a while, and then just got his opportunity and just ate, man, just ate. Went from making 3.5 million, well, really 7 million, in 2022 to signing, even if he doesn't see all of it, signing $100 million deal. I don't give a damn what else is in there. Just signing $100 million contract just has to feel good, particularly for how confident Geno has been in himself. I mentioned some of this in the story that I wrote last night, or I guess it came out Tuesday. I don't even know when it came out, maybe Monday night. But I mentioned some of the ways that Geno's been so confident in himself. I think it was 2014. He called himself a Pro Bowl caliber player, or said that he's shown flashes of being a Pro Bowl caliber player. And he got laughed at. I think Rex Ryan had to apologize for that comment, which looking back is pretty crazy. When there were 10 black starting quarterbacks week 1 of the 2020 season, which I believe was a record at the time. It might still be a record for black starting quarterbacks. Geno quote tweeted, I believe it was ESPN's tweet with that stat, and said it should be 11 guys. Like he saw himself as a starter. Chris, you played Madden. Did you see last year when the rankings came out?
Yeah.
And Geno said he quote, I forget if he quote tweeted it or just tweeted it. He was like, oh yeah, he was quote tweeting someone because he was like, man, OG, they got me ranked behind dudes who ain't even thrown a pass in the league before. I don't remember who he was behind, maybe Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis or somebody. I don't know the specifics, but he's been trying to tell us like, yo, I'm like that. And he's believed he's like that when nobody believed he was like that. Now he's got $100 million, at least contractually. Who knows how much he actually sees? But Chris, good for Geno, man.
Yeah, definitely well earned for Geno. Back to no one saw it. Hell, we were at training camp criticizing, like, hey, these passes are against air, and these dudes ain't completing it now. And that was worrisome. And then as the season progressed, preseason, Geno's not even throwing it deep. He's checked down. He's Mr. Check down. And then week 1 comes, not a bad game, and it just continued to get better and better. You can argue that he didn't, when you can't argue, it's on tape. He didn't have the best second half of the season that you would want, but ultimately he put this team in position to make the postseason, which they did, and that's all you could ask for. A lot of people were thinking this team wouldn't even make the playoffs. Obviously, expectations changed when we saw what Geno was capable of doing and how well he threw the football. His connection with Tyler Lockett, who was always in the end zone, it mirrored Russell Wilson and what Tyler Lockett had done in previous years. But then Geno Smith took the torch and was able to do that. He had his flashes with DK Metcalf, although DK had some drops that would have helped Geno. Ultimately, Geno deserved the opportunity to come back to Seattle, get paid in doing so. And the Seahawks believed in him, and they were willing to pay him, and they see an opportunity to win a Super Bowl. You quote tweeted a comment he had today on a radio station talking about, could this team win a Super Bowl with Geno Smith and Pete Carroll with his excitement? Heck yes, absolutely. Definitely can win a Super Bowl with Geno, but now they have to build the pieces around Geno to do so. Of course, Geno's going to have to improve in certain areas, late game situations. He's going to have to deliver touchdowns, get that into his repertoire more consistently. But for right now, this is a win for Geno Smith, making a lot of bread, playing the game he loves. And this is someone that worked their ass off to get to this point. What was it? Maybe 20, I think you wrote in your story, Mike. What year was it when the 11 black quarterbacks were starters in the league?
I think it was 10 in 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Geno was, or 10 starting black quarterbacks, and Geno felt he should have been the 11th, which is, I respect the confidence. You got Russell Wilson, who's Hall of Famer, balling out at this point. I'm not mad at Geno for feeling some type of way, but watching what Geno did this season, I can't be mad at Geno for feeling that way, especially when it's all on film. We saw what he's capable of doing, and he did it week in and week out for the most part. Again, kudos to Geno for sure.
Yeah, I think Geno. I think by the time this podcast comes out, it'll be exactly a year since we found out that they traded Russell Wilson. At least agreed to trade him. I think the deal didn't become official until March 16th. But I think March 8th is probably when I think Schefter is who broke that last year. And I bring that up because I've been a proponent of teams should really only think, like, obviously you sign people to longer deals. You sign people to 3-year deals and 4-year deals. And when you draft someone on a rookie contract, they have 4 years. But I think just practically, teams should mostly view themselves within like a 2-ish year window. Like if you're looking at something like, yo, by year 1 we do this, by year 2 we do this, by year 3 we win the Super Bowls. Like I feel like so many things can change in that window. Guy blows his knee out, your 6th-round draft pick becomes like Hall of Fame caliber or something like that. You just never really know. Guy gets hurt. You know, there's just so many variables, particularly if you're building around a defense. Defense is hard to sustain year to year in terms of like super high efficiency. There's just so many things. Like I think 2-year windows are like the way to look at it. And the Geno deal is such a great example. It's like if by like think about it, Chris, when they traded Russ, they probably were not probably. I know they were not anticipating a year later giving Geno $100 million. I know they weren't. I guarantee you they weren't. Right? But things changed. They were able to adapt. And I feel like teams have to have that type of flexibility. Now, granted, they planned on winning trying to win a Super Bowl after they traded Russ. Like they didn't plan on taking a step back. But Geno on their books for this amount of money was not in there. Maybe a Jordan Brooks extension was probably like in the thought process around this time next year, assuming he was healthy. And who else? Who knows what could have come up, right? They could have been planning on trading for a corner or paying a corner around this time, but instead, like, whoa, this guy we took in the 5th round has got all pro votes. So what do you know? My point is, there's just so much can change. So I think teams shouldn't look so broad. And you get some people arguing for that, like, by 2025 we compete or whatever. Like, nah, you should look at it. You should be 1 or 2 years away at most, as you are building a team, even if you're coming from like the Texans right now, where they're starting pretty much from scratch. I think that they should be looking at like, we build this thing the right way with all the money we have and all the capital we have in the draft. We should by the 2020 end of the 2024 season, we should be there, and that's not unreasonable to think. You look at what the Jaguars and the Giants were able to do in their first years with their coaches. Same thing with the Vikings. You can make big leaps. But I want to go to what Pete said about winning a Super Bowl with Geno, because Chris, I've been workshopping this idea, and this is my first time saying it out loud or to another person. I tweeted a version of it, but I'm workshopping this theory because it's something I believed, and now I've like been able to put it in like word form. So, and when it comes to paying a quarterback, because that's always the big debate. Should you pay your quarterback? How much should you pay him? I think when you're trying to pay a guy, I've kind of come to this conclusion. You should pay a guy when you think and pay like a big money deal, $100 million type thing. You should pay a guy if you believe he can be the guy to get you to and win a Super Bowl. Like that should be the way you look at it. Can this guy be the quarterback of our team when we get us to and help us win the Super Bowl? And I think if your answer is yes, you should pay the guy. And I think that if you have to put a caveat on it, something like, yeah, I think he can help us get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, but at this price point. See, I think that you get into a dicey space there. And I was thinking about that with like a Daniel Jones or Derek Carr or even a Geno Smith, right? Because you get a lot of people, Chris, I'm sure you've seen this. You're working on the radio, Twitter, even people comment on our discussions on it. It's like, oh, Geno, I'll take Geno for X amount, but if he wants Y, then he's out of here. And it's just, I feel like that's the wrong way to look at it. Like if you, because especially when quarterback deals, you look at a deal like Mahomes' deal. Mahomes' deals were like 10 years or something like that. And some other quarterback deals have been pretty long. Josh Allen, I think his deal is pretty long too. Kyle was under contract for quite a while. If Joe Burrow gets a 4-year deal this offseason, he'll be under contract for like 6 more years, or he'll be under team control for like 6 more years, things like that, 5 or 6. And I bring up the length because if you pay a guy, you gotta, as we've talked about, Chris, you can draft around him. You have to.
That's the purpose of it.
Yeah, you're not gonna pay a guy and then pay a bunch. Yeah, you're gonna build through the draft. Whether your quarterback right now is Jalen Hurts making nothing, you still have to draft well. Look how the Eagles are constructed. Even look how the Chiefs are constructed. I thought the Super Bowl was very telling in that regard. The Chiefs have a quarterback who makes a lot of money. And you look at the 10 best players on the Chiefs, where do they all come from? They came from trades and they came from drafting, by and large. You get they had like a free agent or two here, and they're like their left guard, Tooney, I think is like an example. for the most part, though, they are drafted and they're traded for. You look at the Eagles, they have a quarterback making nothing. You look at their 10 best players. They are drafted and they are traded for largely. It's very rare that they have a ton of players built through free agency. I think Hassan Reddick is probably their best guy that they got in free agency. And you can take like the top 4 teams every year, I feel like, and do that. Go look at their 10 best guys. No matter what their quarterback makes, I can almost guarantee you that the best players on their team are acquired by draft or trade, not just free agency signing. And that's where I've kind of concluded that if the best way to acquire talent and build a championship roster is to draft and trade, paying your quarterback is fine. Like it's paying the wrong quarterback where things get in trouble. I don't think Geno's the wrong guy, so to speak. I don't think he'd be the wrong guy at 25 million a year or 35 million a year or 40 million a year, because if he's the guy, he's the guy, and your team's going to have the room to build around him, because the room to build is in the draft. The room to build is the trades. The room to build is not that extra 15 million so you could go spend on so-and-so. The Seahawks were never going to do that. The Cowboys are never going to do that. The Pittsburgh Steelers are never going to do that. The Packers are never going to do that. They're never going to be the team. The Bengals, for the most part, they've made some exceptions the last couple of years, but generally speaking, you hardly see teams like buy a championship roster. So I feel like if you're not going to buy one, then yeah, pay your quarterback if you think he's the guy to get you to a Super Bowl. If you think he can only get you to the Super Bowl if he's at a bargain, I'm going to whisper into the microphone, then he's probably not the right guy. That wasn't a great whisper, but you get what I'm saying. Does that make sense? It's my first time saying all that out loud.
It did. It does. But then I would question, Mike, that standpoint of he is not your guy, but the options that are available are also limited, right? Because you can look in the draft and say, that's for sure a starter, but how good of a starter is he? Well, we don't know. We're going to take the risk and hope that he can bring us 10 wins. And in Geno's case, the Seahawks have a certain amount of money, right? I think before they made the deal, if we weren't mistaken, we talked about it last episode, they were what, 27 million?
About 23 million.
Oh, 23.
Prior to
okay.
the Geno deal, yeah.
So let's say they wanted to get another, let's say they had an idea of going after Derek Carr, letting Geno walk. Is Derek Carr better than Geno? I think we can both argue, sure. We would take Derek Carr over Geno Smith. The price point, that changes things because Derek Carr is going to be worth a lot more because he's been doing Derek Carr consistently, meaning he's been throwing 25 touchdowns, 20 touchdowns a year, as opposed to Geno's. This is his only year doing it this past season. Right. So whose longevity would you trust more? And in that scenario, I would say when it comes to money, okay, I'm willing to pay Derek Carr, which, okay, we both agreed that Derek Carr might be a little better than Geno. It's not a mountain. It's not a huge gap, but there is a gap between Geno and Derek. And I guess my point is within your answer of, okay, you're going to whisper and say that, the difference isn't that much when it comes to paying these guys, and the fact that if you're going to pay Derek Carr, is he really going to be the difference to a Super Bowl over Geno Smith? Am I making sense there? I think that's kind of where I would draw the line, is like, I think Derek Carr does make it a little different. I don't know how much, maybe one win. So is Derek Carr, he signed a deal 4 years. What was it? 150 or something?
Yeah, 150. Yeah.
Is he 50 million? Not 50, I guess $48 million, $47 million better than Geno?
Yeah, I don't think so. And even then, Geno was better last year. I think the tricky part teams get into, or I don't even know if it's just teams. I think it's mostly like fans and media discourse, is like the idea that I guess I'm pushing back on mostly is that like a guy is good at, like, oh, Mike, Chris, if Geno wants 40, fuck him. But if he wants 25, he's our guy. And in my mind, I'm just like, yo, if you think he's the guy, he's the guy. Like the Seahawks.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Because the Seahawks are not about that extra 15 per year, which is weird anyway, just because that's not how contracts work. He won't be worth $15 million less each year. Salary cap hits are broken up a lot different than that anyway. But even then, if we just look at it by average annual salary, if you say, Mike, Chris, at $40 million, tell Geno kick rocks. or even 30 million is what I was getting told. Like, oh, Mike, Chris, if Geno wants 30 million, tell him kick rocks. If he wants 25, I'm rocking. And that was a lot of the discourse locally too. You can hear it on like talk radio and everything like that. And for me, I'm just like, if I think he's the guy, and I'm with an organization that is not going to use that extra money on going out to get whoever the hell you think. Like, how many years have we talked about this with free agents? Chris, I have to look this up. I'm pretty sure the biggest free agent deal that these guys have given out since like 2012 is Matt Flynn. I think it's still Matt Flynn, with Chinna Nwosu coming in like second in terms of an external guy. So not just re-signing their own guy like they just did with Geno, or like an extension like they've done with like Russ or Bobby or whoever. Like, if you think about it, that's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy. That's not a team that's just going to use that extra money to go get some stud in free agency. And that extra money even is not even going to be used to retain your own guys, because you can always retain your own guys with extensions and swiping the credit card. Like, if you really want to keep a guy, that's what I've learned about free agency over the years and the economics of the NFL. If you want to keep a guy,
You'll
you
keep
can
him.
keep a guy. You can keep him. You can do whatever it takes to. The Saints are in the hole, I'm pretty sure, and just gave their star like $70 million at the signing.
A great point that just happened today, obviously, with Daniel Jones. While you and me might think I wouldn't do that, the Giants believe that is their guy, which I think was your original point.
Yes.
If that's your guy, you're going to pay him whatever it takes to keep him. The Seahawks firmly believe that Geno Smith is their guy, so they're going to pay him accordingly, and Geno agreed to said terms. Now I understand, and it makes sense what you were saying. Yes.
Yeah, so I think Daniel Jones is a really good example that I've been thinking of with, like, I wouldn't have paid Daniel Jones anything because I don't think he's the guy. I don't think he's got 20 million. I don't think he's got 40 million. I don't think he's got 60 million.
And those same people feel the same way about Geno, right?
Yeah.
They feel that Geno is not the guy at 40 million. He's not the guy at 30 million, but at 25, okay, I understand why they would do that. It's still probably a flawed ideology of thinking, but to our point about Daniel Jones, Mike's saying I wouldn't pay that guy anything because you don't think he's the guy.
See, for me, yeah, like for me, it's either you're the guy or you're not. Yeah, like I don't think Daniel Jones is the guy at 5 million, right? I just I just think some guys it's not it. I think eventually the deeper you get in the playoffs, their limitations are just going to be highlighted. I think Jimmy G and Jared Goff have been good examples of that. Like, you can get there even with like all world talent around you, but just like even when you get there, it's just going to be the limitations are just going to be amplified. And maybe Geno is that. I'm not sure. I've only seen him play in one playoff game, so who knows? He could. I'm not saying he could not be in that same boat. Very well could be. But even like I mentioned on the pod before, I just rewatched Super Bowl 49. A couple weeks ago, I rewatched it, and I was like, yo, like even Russell looked very limited in that. Like they obviously, and he throws the interception that cost them the game. But just like watching even before that fourth quarter, I would not have came away from that game thinking like, you got to give this dude whatever Russ ended up getting. I would have probably felt, that guy's a little limited there. They needed this all-world defense just to lose by 4. So, like, I like, for example, a young Russ could fall in that category as well. Whereas when I watch some, like, for example, I watched Jalen Hurts Super Bowl, I'm like, yo, they good. Or even sometimes when I watch Herbert in the playoffs or just when I watch Trevor Lawrence in the playoffs or give me some other guys who just like Josh Allen in the playoffs, Joe Burrow in the playoffs. Like, I don't think their limitations will come back to bite the team, as a quarterback. Where I feel like that would be the case with Daniel. I don't think it'll be the case with Geno. Like, for example, in their playoff game, I don't think like I've watched that game like, oof, they got to move on from 7. 7's not it. But maybe that would change the further they advance. Because I do think that's the calculus you got to do as a team. And the Seahawks obviously did it. Pete Carroll spoke to it. He didn't have to speak to it because they already paid him. But like I know he thinks that. I know that they watched. And I talked to some people associated with Seattle at the Combine about this too. Like about Geno's second half of his season, which statistically was not as strong as the first half. Something we've seen with Russell before in the past too. Geno's process was still really solid. Like even some of the mistakes he made, and we talked about on the show after some of those games, like every interception is not the same, or like every incompletion or every touchdown pass is all not the same. They're all about the process, the play call, the situation. Did you make the right read? Did you do the right thing? Like even if the result was not the same. And you hear Geno say that sometimes, process over results. He will say that quite a bit. And the coaches will echo that too. I think Geno's process was pretty solid throughout. The results obviously didn't always match, but the process is what can sustain. Once you let go of that ball, there's so many things that can happen. Whether you're talking about weather, you're talking about batting off a guy, hitting a guy's helmet, guy drop it, guy tips it and lands in somebody else's hands on defense. There's so many things that can happen. But if was your process when you dropped back, read the defense, and you threw the ball, was that solid? And for Geno, it was solid more often than not, even when the results were not there. And I would guarantee that that's kind of how the Seahawks saw it with getting to the Super Bowl. We'll see. I think they fix the Super Bowl or get to the Super Bowl, Chris. It ain't about Geno as much as it's like fix your defense fast. Like looking at my fake watch over on the pod, like fix it today.
Yeah, if they want to have any chance to compete, make it to the Super Bowl, it starts with revamping that defense. And I would say what's most important right now, you have your starter need, and that is high. I would say a center, edge, and then in the medium area, you can look at guard, inside linebacker, and wide receiver.
And I would say defensive tackle too. That's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot, but there's plenty of ways to go about it. You have, for starters, free agency. You can find young guys that you think can fit what you are doing in your 3-4 scheme. You have the draft. There are tons of ways that this team still can improve. Can it be done in one season? Pete Carroll would probably believe that it can be, but they have to hit on all their free agents. They have to hit on majority of their picks this season, this draft. They're going to have to make sure those things hit. And if they don't, that could be the difference between a win in the wild card or a loss in the wild card, a win in divisional or a loss, a chance to go to a win in the conference, going to the Super Bowl. Those are all intangibles that come into free agency and in the draft. And the good news is maybe they don't need a quarterback. Can they still take a quarterback? I would say, I'm going to use your point here, Mike. And if you take a quarterback in the first round, you probably want him to pay. But then here comes the issue. You also paid Geno Smith. I don't think you're going to pay Geno to sit on the bench if this rookie is that elite. Imagine if they do take a quarterback, CJ Stroud or something. They land him, and CJ wins the job. We and you notice that he won the job, and then Pete Carroll and those guys are like, damn, do we start CJ or do we start Geno? Obviously, it sounds simple. Start the better guy. But considering the fact that you just paid Geno this amount of money, are you really going to bench him? Mike, would it be as simple just to say, yeah, Geno, we're going to go with the young guy? We'll pay you still, obviously, but you're not going to play. It could be that simple. But I don't see that the Seahawks will go and take a high quarterback, although we know that quarterbacks don't grow on trees. Shout out to Schneider. I don't see that scenario where they did pay Geno and they're comfortable with the competition with the same probability of Geno getting benched in favor of a rookie that comes in and lights it up. That's where I have would they do that? And in that scenario, I'd say they believe in their guy Geno. They paid him. Could they take a quarterback in the third round? I don't know who the hell that might be. There might not. I don't even know if there's anyone. I think Hooker's probably the highest graded quarterback that's not elite, but he's pretty darn good, right?
Yeah, Hendon Hooker. Yeah, the guy coming off the knee injury from Tennessee.
And how long do you think he would sit on the board realistically?
I think he would be gone by the second round.
That's what I was thinking. So if the Seahawks wanted to flirt the whole, we'll still take a quarterback, which I get it. You still, because Pete Carroll, he's only got 4 years left on his deal?
Ooh, that's not one I had in my notes. Something like that. 2025, I think he's under contract through. Let's go with that.
2 years left, 3 years. Math is sucking here. 2 to 3 years left.
3 more seasons, I believe.
3 more seasons. So 3 more seasons left. We talked about the Super Bowl window. Cool. You signed Geno. So is the Super Bowl window now until Pete's gone, or is it now in these next 2 seasons? Mike, you hinted at you're going to look at this year and next year, although you have said multiple times that this year is the window. So why would you now take a quarterback when you know this is your window, right? You can get a free agent quarterback. You guys dropped The Athletic had a 2023 NFL free agency rankings. You can go in there and probably find you a backup that if you need something, he can come in and fill in, hopefully, right? Outside of that, though, the defense is something that needs to be restructured. You need some depth there. You still need an offensive lineman, a center. The guard spot is you re-sign Phil Haynes. Okay, a talented young guy, but I still think you would need a veteran. There are a bunch of pieces of this puzzle that if you want to win in 2024 for the Super Bowl, now is the time to do it. You don't really have room to. We're going to develop a guy for 1 year, but we also signed Geno, and I guess maybe that's what they're thinking. Maybe they will take a quarterback in the first round. But ultimately, if I was to do this, I would say if we're going to go all in, we got to get a Jalen Carter. We got to get the best defensive guy on our board. Quarterback can wait. Again, you can go to the free agent tracker and try to find a quarterback to come in. I think Drew Lock's probably gone. Would he be willing to sit back and be a bench player, be a backup again? I don't think so. I think Drew wants to start in this league, and I think the Seahawks thought he could start. Unfortunately, he didn't play so well during the preseason, got COVID, and Geno was handed the keys and never looked back. I say all that to say, yes, the Seahawks can draft the quarterback, but I don't know if that's in the best interest for what they want to do. Pete was on radio earlier today saying, can they win the Super Bowl with Geno? His answer was absolutely, heck yeah. Well, if that's the case, then you should be building around Geno, building a better team, building a better defense, building that offensive line, maybe going out and getting a wide receiver. Although Derek Young, he showed some promise. Maybe there's another guy in the draft that you can go out and get that changes the dynamic for you as a third wide receiver in the slot. So it's tricky. I'm not 100% sure what they will do, but based on the fact that they re-signed Geno, I do think now is a time to build around Geno and try to catch the Niners, if not pass them.
I think this is one of those situations where when we say they or the Seahawks, the difference between a front office and a coaching staff needs to be specified. So like you say, let's say we don't know what's in their best interest. It depends on who's from what lens. Front offices are kind of naturally thinking forward. That's just kind of naturally the nature of the business, right? Whereas coaches are usually in like a win currently thing. Sometimes that aligns. Like Pete and John are usually pretty aligned on that. But like playing young guys versus playing veterans who know stuff, you will see some tug of wars there with some front offices, and you could probably front offices and coaching staffs, and you can even sense you guys can probably fill in the blanks of when you've probably seen that here. The Seahawks have had some guys hit their third contract, right? Like, well, if you're the front office and you're the scouts and you're like scouting guys to play, you want to see them play. You don't want to see a Cody Barton necessarily not get the chance to start till year 4, right? You want to see him on the field. Right? Same thing with even like a Marquise Blair, who was like pick 47 or something like that, right? And never really got that chance to be a full-time starter. You don't want to see that as take a guy that high. Same thing with like a Rashad Penny, didn't make his first start until like year 4. Now that some of that is injury stuff, but still, that's pretty crazy when you think about it. Like you scout these guys and you want them to play. So the front office has its interest usually, and then the coaching staff, they usually thinking like, yo, I need to put the best players on the field right now who know their shit. I don't got time to deal with these growing pains of these young guys missing blocks or assignments or whatever. Those things don't always align. And so the reason I bring all that up is because Pete Carroll, as the coach of the team, that's kind of like a short-term thinking, right? Like, let's try to win right now. Let's try to win right this second because that's my best interest as the coach. I get judged on the win-loss record of the team. And so I need to make sure the win-loss record is as close to 17-0 as humanly possible. Right? That's just a natural part of the job. Whereas the front office, that's still important, right? Front office wants to build a team that can go 17-0, but they also think down the line a little bit. They have to manage the books a little more. That matters a little bit more. Like even then when Pete was on the radio on Tuesday talking about it, I think the first question was, hey, how'd this deal get done? And then the first thing Pete did was compliment John, right? And their salary cap guy. Like, basically like they did that shit. I was trying to fix our defense, pretty much is kind of how he answered that question. So the reason to bring that all back to pick 5 in particular, as we talk about a quarterback, the front office, for example, might be like, yo, Pete, we not about to pick here again. So let's think long-term here for a second and take Will Levis or take CJ Stroud, like you mentioned, or take Anthony Richardson, because down the line, this is going to help us be sustainable. as a franchise. We're just going to make a smooth transition, very like Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers-y transition, very Alex Smithy to Patrick Mahomes transition as a franchise. We can just do that if we take the guy now. Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson, same thing, same concept at least. Let's take the guy now and we can transition. Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. Now that didn't work out, but the thought process is there. So, I mean, I could easily see that being the thought, the long-term vision from the front office versus maybe the short-term or more short-term vision from the coaching staff, because those motive agendas don't always align. Now, again, in Seattle, they're usually pretty aligned, but in other areas, you see that maybe the owner wants you to take this quarterback, but the coaching staff is like, nah, he's not ready, or the GM likes a guy, but the coaching staff is not sold on him, or vice versa. There's so much that goes on when it comes to drafting behind the scenes, particularly with high picks. Because there's more pressure to play. It's a 6th round pick. Take a linebacker, you take a running back. Who gives a shit? He's gonna be on special teams anyway. You take a quarterback at pick 9. It's like, well, how soon are we playing this guy, right? Like, how long are we willing to wait? And as the Packers are showing us, even if it's pick 26, what I think Jordan Love was, that can just get dicey, which it did in Green Bay very fast. They got a few FU seasons from Aaron Rodgers, but I do think I don't really have a good answer for how those two things mesh. Pete Carroll did say on Tuesday that them taking a quarterback early would be for the long haul, quote unquote, long haul move. So he's kind of acknowledging that it would not help them in the short term, like you're saying, Chris. Taking Will Levis does not help the 2023 Seahawks. Taking Anthony Richardson, I do not think helped the 2023 Seahawks. It might help the 2024, 2025, 2026 Seahawks, but how much does the 2023 coaching staff give a shit about that? That's a very interesting dynamic.
That was a good point you brought up with how the people in the office are viewing things and Pete, because obviously Pete's in win now mode no matter what. But to your point that you brought up, well, hey, Pete, you might not be here by then, bro. So you're really just bringing in the new generation of Seahawks, which is also fair. But then from a fan's perspective, and maybe this is something you could tweet out, fans, like, how are you guys feeling? Would you guys be willing to just take a CJ Stroud or the best available on the board and wait out 2023, see how Geno does, 2025, 2026, that's the year you're going for a Super Bowl? I'm curious now because obviously fans are a huge part of, well, actually, they're not a part of anything. If they want to do it this way, they're going to do it this way, regardless of what y'all think. So it'd be interesting to see what people and listeners and fans of the Seahawks are thinking in that regard of, damn, do I really want to, I'm cool with rolling with Geno or draft the best quarterback available, let them duke it out. And obviously, let's say they get back to 9 wins. Is that a successful season? Or do they want more? The fans, that is, do they want more from the Seahawks? They want a Super Bowl this season going into 2024. So I think that's going to be quite interesting. And just to throw out some backup quarterbacks, if they don't draft one, if you want to look at the free agency list of quarterbacks that are available, Taylor Heineke, 30 years old. I think he's someone that could be a solid backup for Geno. Probably get him for a nice little deal. Wouldn't be too expensive. Our favorite, we're both Cougs, so Mike probably knows where I'm going with this. He's gonna cost a pretty penny, but that's Gardner Minshew. I think if Geno went down, Gardner could definitely come in and just keep the boat steady. So those are two guys that if the Seahawks are thinking we're not going to draft a quarterback, we'll find one in free agency, those are two guys that I think you can land. It might cost more for Gardner because his performance was pretty good, and he's been a backup for since he's got in the league. And he's been pretty consistent.
He's been a starter a little bit here and there.
But his main role is backup.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So with that being said, he's done that really well. And bringing him back to Pacific Northwest, I wouldn't be mad at it. And I would be comfortable if something were to happen to Geno. He comes in and keeps the boat riding. And that's just some guys. I'm sure you probably have some players that you could think of at quarterback that could come in and potentially not just save the day, but keep this team where they need to be in a hunt for a Super Bowl if they, in fact, do not draft a quarterback.
I think even if they draft a quarterback, like in let's say the late rounds, so you take like Jake Haener or something like that, kid from Fresno State, like in the 6th round or something like that, you still need a veteran. I think the more I've learned, I know, just because the more I've learned about like how the quarterbacks get prepared each week, you need a veteran guy. It's ideal to have like Sean Mannion they had. Because when you're on the scout team, the scout team does so much in terms of preparing your first team defense for that week, and having a veteran who can just each week be a chameleon, basically like, okay, this week we're playing the Rams, so we need you to sample all of these Sean McVay passing concepts and all of their language that we know of, and like get our first team defense ready. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, go. You don't have much time to learn. All right, the next week we are playing. Here, give me someone from a different tree. We are playing. Give me another team.
The Saints.
All right, we're playing the Saints, right? So you're going to be, now we need you to be Derek Carr. We need you to run all of the Saints concepts that we know. It's a different scheme. So we need you to pick up all that real quick and learn it. And it's just a lot easier when you have a veteran who's like, oh, okay, yeah, I used to play here, and we kind of ran that here. Okay, we ran something like that. All right, I kind of know that. Oh, I used to work with this person at this stop, so I kind of know this concept because of this. That's where Geno is really valuable for Russell. Is because Geno had been with the Giants, he'd been with the Jets, he'd been with the Chargers. So if it was time to play such and such team that week, he was like, oh, yeah, I remember this. I've played against this defensive coordinator before. I know how this is going to work. I know how this passing concept works, not only to get the first team defense ready, but also to help Russell as they made the game plan. A rookie just can't do that. He doesn't have the database of experience. Even if you're trying to develop him, he just doesn't have that, which is why I think people just like overvalue somebody sitting behind someone else for a year. You don't learn that much. I mean, you learn a lot, but you don't learn as much as you guys think when you're sitting. Like if you draft Anthony Richardson, for example, to sit behind Geno and he's your quarterback too, Anthony Richardson is going to spend a lot of time learning scout team shit each week. He'll get no live reps, and each week he'll be pretending to be Jalen Hurts. Then the next week he'll pretend to be Kirk Cousins, and the next week he'll pretend to be whoever the hell the Seahawks are playing, and he'll learn like little tidbits of other schemes while learning his own. They're just throw a lot of information at him, and he won't develop as much as you guys would think. Like he still learns. He can watch how Geno prepares himself, watch how Geno takes care of his body, listen to how Geno Smith commands a huddle. Like there are intangibles. I don't say you pick up zero skills, but you nothing prepares you for playing football like playing football.
And I fact checked my own self. I looked up how much it would cost Gardner Minshew, and it wouldn't be much at all. He was making 2.5 with the Eagles last season. The Seahawks would probably get him at around that again, if not less, to be honest with you. So it wouldn't even be expensive going after someone in Gardner Minshew. And then what? Taylor Heineke. Okay, he made 1.5. Honestly, yeah. If the Seahawks were, and these are, I would say, some solid veterans that can come in that know the game, you probably still want to get maybe someone a little more seasoned. But I think one of these guys, I think, could definitely fill the role if they were cool with coming to Seattle as a backup, in my opinion. And the money wouldn't be much at all. I was wrong.
Yeah, well, I think the money, yeah, they wouldn't be tripping about the money on a backup guy. Also, there's not a lot of competition for some of these backup guys. That's why you see a lot of older guys getting signed, though, guys who are like 37, 36, because it just helps with the preparation. When you're the backup, you're preparation guy. You're not groom you to be the next best thing guy necessarily, unless they've spent a high draft pick on you. But even then, like I said, you do. If you're QB2, you spend a lot of time as the scout team dude. You'll see some teams take a guy high, and not only will he not start as the QB1, sometimes he won't even be QB2 because they want a veteran guy to do all that stuff to get all the scout team reps. And they don't have that much money left. You know, before we recorded, I was looking up, trying to figure out what Geno's cap hit would be, and I just can't get a good feel for it. I need to see his signing bonus, whatever that was. But if he's getting, according to my girl Follow, $28 million in year one, then that cap. Well, it's tough. You got 40 million guaranteed, I think was the number. So his cap hit could be anywhere from like 10 million to like 17, 18, 19. Like that's a big window, which is still pretty low. I think that would all be right around where like Quandre's, I think, is, and where Jamal's is after their extension. So those are some decent numbers, I think, but it still doesn't give them much room to do much else. Like I still think they're going to have to make a decision on Shelby Harris. Trading or cutting him would be $8.9 million that you save. You could extend him as well if you want. Same thing with Gabe Jackson. I think that's $6.5 million that you save, whether a trade or a cut. Again, you can extend him as well. Chenna, I'd probably extend Chenna. I think you save like $5 million if you can extend Chenna. Same thing with Noah Williams, or excuse me, well, not Noah Williams, Noah Fant. I think like 4.6 mil you can save there. So the and I don't know what their incentives mean. Like me and Chris are going over what likely to be earned incentives mean versus not likely to be earned. And boy, dog, the CBA is the most convoluted shit. Like I was reading that this morning, like 8 o'clock, and I was just like, yo, what is like? So I know the difference between likely to be earned and not likely to be earned, right? Like if it's likely to be earned if it got hit the year before, right?
Yeah.
So for Geno, if then 20 they have this year, hey Geno, part of your incentives is like $2 million if you make the Pro Bowl. All right, well that's likely to be earned because he just made the Pro Bowl the previous season. So those are how those work, and those things hit the cap differently. I think it hits in the CBA. It says like it hits the team salary. It hits it right away. It'll count against it if you hit it the year before. So if they say, hey Geno, you get $1 million if you play 90% of our snaps. Well, we played 100 of the snaps last year, 100%. So it's already there. That's likely to be earned. So that would be different than a not likely to be earned incentive, like an all-pro team, winning MVP, winning a playoff game, which did not happen last year. So things like that. So when you see that 30 million in incentives number, that's why it's hard for me to calculate the signing bonus a little bit, because I'm like, okay, well, or excuse me, it's hard to calculate the cap hit. I'm like, well, okay, which incentives are likely to be earned, which ones are not. It's a mess. I wish it was more like NBA contracts for the most part, which is just like, all right, here's the max. There's the cap hits make the cap hits make way more sense. You go look at you can go to like Spot Track, however you say it, and look up just a random player's salary cap hit. Go look up Anthony Davis to the Lakers. Go look up his versus Derek Carr's deal. You're like, what the hell? Like, this is way more complicated than it needs to be. I think those guys have similar like per year salaries. I think like it's very complicated. That said, though, I think the other thing people are doing, Chris, is applauding the Seahawks for getting Geno at a bargain here, getting him at a base value of 3 years, 25 million a year, and at max it's 35 million a year. And I think that's good for the Seahawks. That's like a decent deal. Like it's better than the Daniel Jones deal, which I think is terrible. It feels very Carson Wentzy. I think the reason that we're only we're however many minutes into the show, we're just now bringing that up because I think the win is getting Geno, just at any price point, any like quote unquote reasonable price point. Obviously, it wasn't going to be $55 million a year or whatever, but like I think just re-signing Geno for the 2023 season and if he balls out, having him for 2024 as well. Like I think that's the win. Like if it was 35 million, that's a win. If it was 40 million, that's a win. Right? Like I think there's a misconception about like what's the middle tier of quarterback. Nah, man, like if you throw out rookie deals when you're looking at quarterback salaries, a competent quarterback makes 40 million a year. That's like the going rate for like a competent quarterback, and then like an above average guy makes like 35 or whatever. So like, yeah, Geno just made the Pro Bowl as an original ballot guy, meaning he didn't get in because like 10 people said no, like Tyler Huntley. Like, sorry, Snoop, but that was ridiculous. Like Geno was original ballot. And if that's the case, the going rate for that type of shit is like $40 million, if not more. If Daniel Jones is getting that, then the going rate's even higher because Daniel didn't make it last year, I don't believe. So I think the win for me is just getting him back. If you believe he's the guy, I think he is. And I don't know, Chris, do you think he's that dude? I don't know
I think I'm not willing to say that yet because everything's going to change this year because this will be everyone that played against him a full year of tape on Geno. Now we get to see how good he can be because last season no one knew how good he was. Right. Me and you were watching training camp like, oh yeah, this might get real bad. And he comes out and plays really well, throws over 69% completion rating, that is, to receivers. And now everyone has film on him. So you would hope that Geno gets better, but I don't know if he's the guy. I'm going to sit back and watch and see how he improves, how he handles late game scenarios, because again, everyone has film on him now. It's different going week by week than going a whole season and seeing tendencies, where he struggles, where he's really good at. Teams are going to take that. The Niners are going to take that. The Rams, the Cardinals. They're all going to have the opportunity to watch a full year of Geno and then come back and hopefully have answers. And then Geno also has a full year to see what defenses do against him.
Yeah.
So it's a opportunity to see how good Geno is. And I just don't have an answer for you. Like, I would love to be like, yep, he's the guy. But now I think we'll be able to tell based on this season because everyone has seen it. Geno has seen it. And I can give you a better prognostic on Geno Smith as this season goes on into the next year. So right now, I'll be honest. I don't know if he's the guy, but I'm not mad at what the Seahawks did because of what he proved just coming in last season. He came in, proved me wrong. I didn't think he would play as well as he did, although I did have the Seahawks winning 8 games. It's neither here nor there. Didn't know how much Geno would play a role into that, but he played a vital role, and the Seahawks finished 9-8 and got into the postseason.
Yeah, I think for me, I really think, dang, I'm about to sound like a film nerd, but like I do think like when you watching the games just feels so different to me. Like when you look at the difference between like Jared Goff and Matt Stafford, I think that was just such a great example of just how the offense can look different. Now, I'm not a huge Matt Stafford guy, nor am I a very Jared Goff guy, but like the way the offense looked was different. Now, some of the numbers might match up, but like just you look at it, you look at how when they had Jared Goff, they basically had a training wheels offense. It was like first read, hit it, yards after catch, under center, dress up everything to look the same, heavy play action, stay in one personnel grouping, usually 11 personnel. Like it was very like they were holding his hand in LA, and it worked. They got to the Super Bowl like that. Like I say, it can't work. They also scored no points, damn near, in that Super Bowl. But the point is, you could see how the offense looked, and you could see the hand holding that McVay was doing. So when McVay was like, "I got to get this guy up out of here," I understood, and he got Stafford. I don't think Stafford's that much better than Goff, but I do think you can run a totally different offense, and you could see it. Like they ditched that whole hand holding thing. They was like, "Okay, wait, we can just get in shotgun 5 wide and let bro cook," which is basically what they were doing, and it helps to have Cooper Kupp. But like that, the offense looks so. It was like a big boy offense. As Jordan Rodriguez, one of our favorite guests on the Seahawks Man to Man podcast, as she would like to put it, like they just unlocked all five reads in the progression. Like you could unlock that with Matt in a way that they just weren't with Jared. So even if the numbers were not just worlds better, you could just unlock more. And that's kind of how I see it with Geno versus some of these other guys. Like the reason why I'm a little bit more confident in what Geno was doing versus like what Jared Goff is doing in Detroit, Jared, who had good numbers this year, what Daniel Jones did in New York. And I think Derek Carr falls in a little bit of that lane with Geno too. Like I just think you don't need to hold their hands with your offense. I just think you can just push comes to shove, you can just let Geno go. You can put him in the shotgun. Hey, man, we are down 10 or whatever. Or we just need a big drive right here. We're down, go. You shotgun. Geno's really good out of empty, which is like the defense. The defense knows you're about to throw, and you can still throw it. I think that's usually a sign of a big boy offense. I think it was like the Giants game in particular. I think the Giants tied it, and Geno went down in like 5 plays, 75 yards, all throws. I think all out of shotgun with that big throw to Tyler Lockett down the sideline for a touchdown. And I think one of those Cardinals drives in Arizona was like that too. And it's just a great example of big boy offense. Like that's my best way of putting it. So for me, that's why I lean towards. It's not just because of the numbers or it's how it looked and how they got to those numbers. Because there's different ways to go about it. And I even think that like Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl was another good example. Like Jalen was able to do whatever the fuck he wanted to score right. on the Chiefs in that game. Like he fumbled, like trying to switch hands, but I firmly believe if they got the ball back, they was going to go down and score because Jalen was just hooping. And you see the Mahomes is like that too. Like Joe Burrow is like that as well. Like he gets an empty and just starts operating and checking, sliding protections and hitting hot routes and stuff like that. So whereas other guys can do that, but like I do think it's different levels with like a Baker Mayfield or what you saw the Panthers running with Sam Darnold later in the year when they had a good offense. Same thing, like I said, with Jared Goff, Daniel Jones. I feel like you just got to hold their hand a little bit more. And I'm not paying you $40 million to hold your hand. If I got to hold your hand, I'm gonna get some wag run this big boy offense with, particularly on a veteran contract. I think if you want to hold a guy's hand on a rookie deal, it's kind of whatever. Do what you need to. So that's why I think he's a guy. Which is why I think if that's your guy, like the Seahawks clearly agree with that sentiment, just getting him is the win. Like Even if they needed to give him 50 million or whatever, they wouldn't have done that. But like, if you got your guy, you got your guy. Josh Allen, same thing. You can run whatever the hell you want with Josh. I think he's the guy. They haven't got to the Super Bowl yet, but like, I don't think it's because Josh isn't the guy. So not every team who falls short is because their quarterback isn't the guy or he makes too much money either. Sometimes your team just isn't built well around it, or you don't have pass rush or someone gets hurt. The Bills were down like the fourth string safety in the game they lost this year in the playoffs. So anyway, I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm trying to make this case I'm trying to get people to look at this a little differently than just the Seahawks won because they got Geno at a bargain. The economics of the NFL do matter, but if you just talk about like, if your goal is to win now, your quarterback contracts don't hamstring you the way people think. And if you got your guy, that's important. Your goal is to win games. Like, yeah, you want to win games with everyone making like a bargain or whatever, but that's just unrealistic. Somebody on your team is going to be making a shit ton of money if you win.
Yeah, someone's going to be getting paid.
I guarantee it. And it'll likely be several people making a lot of money if you win the Super Bowl. It's just a matter of where that money is being allocated. But at the end of the day, your salary cap isn't showing up on the screen when you hold up the trophy. You're holding up the trophy. I've kind of, as much of a football nerd I am, I've kind of leaned towards like, I just need to get the best players on the field. Obviously, the economics matter, but like, get them on the field. The Rams sold their soul and swiped the hell out of that credit card to get to the Super Bowl. They got it. Now the credit card bills do. But you know what the people who own the Rams are probably doing? Like, fine, pay it. I'm going to sit here and pay it while I'm looking at the Lombardi trophy in my office. That's the goal. Now, we still got to talk process a little bit in that, but that's kind of where I'm leaning as like a roster construction thing. The Seahawks got the guy they think they can get them to where they want to be. That's the win. Maybe the Giants think that too. I think they're drunk, but maybe they think that too. That's how I think we gotta look at it, because you can always swipe stuff to the credit card if you need to. If like a guy pops up and it's like, whoa, we need to extend this guy. Actually, we got to keep him. He's a baller. Swipe the credit card in and keep him. Do what the Saints have been doing. The Saints have told their fan base, we will swipe the hell out of this American Express as long as it keeps us competitive, right? And we'll deal with it later. You know what? You can always do that. That's a realistic thing as long as you have your owner's blessing. So I think that's the Seahawks won because they kept their guy. That's the moral of that story for me.
Well said. I'm gonna see what they do. What Geno does this next season. It'll be fun. Another exciting season. We got the draft coming up. We have so much in store for you guys. Hopefully we can get Ballore back on. The Russell Wilson killed it, and then it's been a challenge. And our homies across the pond, they've had him on twice. They're bragging. We'll get you on eventually, Nick Ballore.
Yeah, we will. We'll make it happen.
Is there anything else you want to add, Mike, before we get out of here?
Just appreciate the love from you guys all off season. Sorry I sounded like Doc Rivers last pod. I was not feeling great.
It's not Blake's fault.
Yeah, no, it was bad. It was bad. The information provided was good. Oh, shout out to everybody listening to my appearance on the Athletic Football Show too. We're getting a lot of feedback on that. Also sounded like Doc Rivers on there too, but the information was solid. So yeah, we'll be back in the very near future talking draft. Probably not as much free agency, but definitely draft, because it's still what they could do with pick 5. There's so many different directions, and then you got Jalen Carter's arrest and charges he's facing that may slide him down. And it's like that goes into the whole character concern thing. So they can still take a quarterback. They can take best available. There's so much just with their first pick that we could dive into. So that's great. I can't wait to get people who know more about the draft than we do on the show. So until then, thank you guys for tuning in.
Yes.
We'll catch you guys next time on the Seahawks Man to Man podcast, and we're out.